Are you seeing my chats today? Maybe you could welcome people in there because I'm going to be talking in a second. Say, hey, this is Lone with FCCI or Kingdom Way. Welcome.
Hey Ken, I think you sent me the wrong link, buddy. You sent me the one on the virtue-driven leader instead of Bitcoin. Unless I'm goofing something up. And I can't hear you because of the wonderful background in my face music.
So great. Put it in the comments.
I can't hear y'all. The music is overriding. Thanks, Kim.
Are you saying that I sent you the wrong thing?
No, Ken did.
Yeah, it looked like the virtue-driven leader.
You got the right one now? It looks like you put it in the chat there. See the second one, Greg?
Yep, I got it.
Okay. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. Unless you're on the West Coast, then it's still morning, but welcome, welcome, welcome to the first ever Kingdom Way webinar event. We are so excited that you've decided to join us today. We know you could be doing a million other things, but we really appreciate you tuning in for a very special webinar with an exciting guest today. So thank you for joining us for the most consequential innovation of our lifetime and its impact on the world. And of course, you signed up for this. We're talking about Bitcoin, and here's what you can expect to discover today. Someone needs to mute their channel. Hear my voice in the background. Here's what you can expect today: what Bitcoin really is, how it compares to other cryptocurrencies, as faith-driven leaders in the marketplace, what is the biblical lens that we need to view things through? And that could be me, actually.
We're talking about Bitcoin. Here's what you can expect to discover today.
Sorry, 1 second.
Someone needs to mute their channel.
All right, and we're so excited to explore much more with you today with Tim McTavish. So there we go. There we got it. Thank you. Okay, perfect. So just to tell you a little bit about myself, sorry about the confusion there. We're trying to get all of our tech pieces in the right order. Thanks for your patience as this is the first time we're doing this. But just to introduce myself and Kingdom Way a little bit, I am the president and CEO of Kingdom Way Ministries. We are super jazzed to be able to do this for you today, but we're also jazzed to be able to incite and outfit kingdom leaders here in Northern Colorado and Denver and across the country to leverage their gifts, positions, and passions for the sake of the gospel, to transform lives and communities, and for the sake of God's fame as well. So here's a little bit, going to share this with you real quick if you want to find out more about us. If you're tuning in for the first time, kingdomwayministries.net, you can go to this website. You could see all the things that we're involved here with live local events, peer advisory groups, executive coaching. We're going to share a little bit more about this later today, Banded for Men. But also you need to know that we, 2 years ago, merged with a national organization called FCCI, Fellowship of Companies for Christ International. And we are so excited about this, as we have teamed together to have a deeper and broader impact across the country. And we're a local expression now of FCCI in the Denver and Northern Colorado region here. So fcci-site.com is that website. And I want to thank Ken behind the scenes, who is joining us with all the tech pieces. You may have been a part of a FCCI purpose-driven or purpose webinar in times past with Ken. So, hey, we'd love to hear from you. Put in the chat if you would. Where are you hailing from? We'd love to see that right now. Put it in the chat. Where are you dialing in from? We've introduced ourselves. Let us know where you're from. So, Doug Sheridan, good to see you, buddy. Dave Watson, thanks. Welcome from Denver. Anybody else? My lovely wife is helping here on the chats. Put in the comments below. Where are you from? Love to hear from you. Daryl, thank you. Denver. I saw some Aussies even sign up. Look at there, Pennsylvania. Jeff, welcome. Susan, great to have you from Castle Rock. Anyone else? All right, Alona here with Loveland. So all across the country from the ones I saw registered, welcome everybody. So before we introduce our speaker today, we're going to dive right in. We just want to share a few details with you. Number one, we have a disclaimer to share with you. We are not financial advisors. So the content and conversation around the topic today cannot be taken as financial advice. We're just sharing views and opinions, and some you may not agree with necessarily, some you might, and don't necessarily reflect the views of Kingdom Way Ministries and FCCI. And secondly, we want to let you know that Tim has graciously offered to provide a PDF of all of the notes he'll be sharing today. So if you register for this webinar, you will get an email following the webinar today with that presentation. So you don't have to worry about taking notes feverishly behind the scenes. We'd love to share that with you. And then thirdly, we are going to have time at the end of the webinar for some key question and answers. So if you have a question that pops up in your mind as Tim shares his content, please, please, please put that in the chat. We've got a few people monitoring that, and then we'll take as many of those at the end of our time today to field one by one. So put those in the chat as those questions arise so that we can see those there. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce our special guest, Tim McTavish, today. So you can see his mugshot coming up on the screen there. First and foremost, Tim loves Jesus and wants everyone to know that. And he wants you to experience the abundant life that's available to you in Christ right in the marketplace, in your home, in your personal life. He's married to his college sweetheart named Pam. They've been married for 34 years, same as my wife and I. Alona said hi in the chat there. Has 3 grown children, 1 grandchild, and another one on the way. So congrats, Tim. Tim built an online insurance shopping platform during the internet boom, which he sold in 2008. And since then, he has been involved as an investor in dozens of businesses, including some film projects that you probably have heard of, like Sound of Freedom and I Can Only Imagine. Tim's also a trustee at the Colorado Christian University, just south in Denver area, where he served as the interim president 2 years ago. He's also an affiliate faculty member who loves teaching about stewardship in the area of personal finance planning on the university at Colorado Christian University campus. And a little more than a month ago, Tim decided to learn more about, or I said a month ago, that wouldn't make him much of an expert, would it?
Yeah.
A little more than a year ago, Tim decided to learn more about Bitcoin and fell headlong into the rabbit hole and learned more and more and more. He believes Bitcoin is the most consequential innovation of our lifetime, and he is eager to share more of why today and some information that he's learned. So I would brand him an expert in comparison to my knowledge. And just one last thing before we turn it over to Tim, I just want to thank Tim as well, as we started a monthly breakfast called Faith Work Connect in Denver, and he was our inaugural presenter. Where we got to know him and developed a great relationship with him. So Tim, thank you so much for joining us. We'll turn it over to you the next 30 minutes or so and look forward to what you have to share.
Very good. Well, thank you, Dan. I sure appreciate it. And what a wonderful opportunity. And thank you for Kingdom Way Ministries, all the work that you folks do to help ensure that good, godly leadership occurs in the marketplace, and just to support the Christian business operators as they just try to figure out how to integrate faith and work. So thank you to FCCI as well with that. Yes, I'm excited to share with you today. I've been dabbling with a variety of investments and did a few crypto things back in the day. And then after trying to figure it all out, I thought I got to really understand what it is that I'm getting into. So I've been spending a lot of time in the last year and a half, just trying to understand Bitcoin far more. So I'm excited to share about that. I first heard about Bitcoin in 2009 when it was 10 cents. And boy, what an opportunity you missed there. But as I asked around, people said, hey, stay away from that. That's drug money. That's money that you don't want to get into. And so I avoided it, wanted to be a good steward with what God had entrusted to me. But in 2019, started reading a little bit more. And then, like I say, last year fell down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, as they say. So just real quickly, why the color orange? Well, some years ago, somebody developed this little logo you see in the upper right corner with the orange background. And today it is called swallowing the orange pill if you end up becoming like I am and becoming a Bitcoin advocate. So anyway, just for what that's worth, Bitcoin is associated with the color orange. What's our agenda today? We're just going to talk about, well, what is money anyway? And what do we think of when we think of money? And I'll express a little bit first as to how and why our current financial system is broken and how Bitcoin is the best money ever. And as Dan had pointed out, this is this is for educational purposes only. This is not an endorsement by Kingdom Way Ministries or FCCI, and not financial advice. Do your own research. But I want to first lead off with the statement that you are created in the image of God. Now, this might mean many things, but one thing that being created in the image of God certainly implies when you read in the passages of Genesis is that mankind was given dominion and sovereignty. If God is the ultimate sovereign, then we as being created in his image also have sovereignty. And that's an important concept to contemplate, because what does that really mean? We've been given sovereignty over the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, the earth. But one thing we were not given dominion over was one another. It's interesting that even in Adam and Eve's relationship, and never throughout Scripture do you see the idea that one person can rule legitimately over another. That's what makes the concept and idea of slavery so abhorrent. And so when we think about then what if there's a need for me to, I want you to do something for me. Well, I need to enter into trade negotiations, as it were, with my fellow sovereign, as one sovereign to another, to enter into a negotiation where I am honoring your dignity, your agency, and the sovereignty that God has placed over you and me, so that when we negotiate and trade with one another, that exchange is fair. And to the extent that it is fair, we honor that agency and the sovereignty of one another. And this is brought out in a few places of scripture with this idea of unequal weights and measures. For example, in Proverbs 20, it says, unequal weights and unequal measures are both alike, an abomination to the Lord. Or in Deuteronomy, you shall not have in your bag two kinds of weights, a large one and a small. You shall not have in your house two kinds of measures, a large and a small. A full and a fair weight you shall have. A full and a fair measure you shall have, that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. For all who do such things, all who act dishonestly, are an abomination to the Lord your God. Imagine what life was like thousands of years ago when these words were written. A person might be purchasing some flour with a little bit of silver. Well, they would put that on the scales and they would weigh how much flour for how much silver. And sometimes that would require a counterweight on the scale. Well, what if my counterweight is supposed to represent an ounce, but in my case, it's the smaller one that represents 0.9 of an ounce, if you will? Or what if I'm trying to say that I'm giving you more, but I tip the scales in my favor by adding a little bit of weight? You can see how unequal weights and measures are defrauding one another if you exchange in that way. And by doing so, I would argue that we are marring the image of God in others by using money that isn't a fair representation of the exchange in question. And so the question is, does God care about money? It would appear that he does. So then it begs the question, what is money? I mean, we all work for it. We save for it. We never seem to have enough of it. But really, what is it? Well, money has several characteristics. For one, it's a medium of exchange. The currency that we use is a great intermediary to use as we buy and sell things with one another. Imagine the situation if I was an apple orchard grower and I had a whole bunch of apples, but I want a house to be built. Well, if you're the construction worker, how much apples can you eat? And how quickly will those apples go bad before we can get this house built? Well, money solves for that. It's a medium of exchange that allows for what's called the coincidence of wants. That what's the chances that you're going to want the very thing that I'm producing or selling? Money helps to be the thing that we can at least exchange as something of value that we can use with one another. And as a result, it becomes a unit of account that we can start to measure things by, and we can start pricing things in that sort of manner. But then ultimately what it represents is a store of value. I worked for something, and think about it this way. You work at your job, you get a paycheck, you receive that paycheck, and it's a receipt demonstrating the work that you provided for your employer. And then I can use that to spend later. And the better that the money is a store of value, the better money that it is. And I can store it and use it at a later time and date. And societies have used money in all kinds of different forms over the years. Shells, beads, handcrafted beads of a special type by some groups, even in some cultures, whales' teeth. In prison, it might be cigarettes or something like that. We've seen gold has historically and other precious metals been used for currency. Today, we have pieces of paper that we call money, dollar bills. Could be a ledger or an IOU that is used in our bank accounts, and just a number on a page when we log into our bank account. And even other things could be considered something of money, if you will, or at least a store of value. Our stocks that we might invest in, our real estate assets. Why? Because these things hold value, maybe not as liquid, and I'm not going to sell my house for a cup of coffee, but you can see that I could buy a lot of cups of coffee with my house if I had to. So you kind of get the idea. Money can be all sorts of different things. And some good characteristics of money is that it retains value, that it's durable, it's not going to degrade, it's portable, it's divisible, it's scarce, meaning that it can't be counterfeited and just multiplied and debased. It's fungible, where $1 is as good as the next or whatever. And it's accepted. People around the globe, or certainly in my local jurisdiction and economy, will accept it as something of value. And one thing to make note of is that people always gravitate to sound money. There's a reason why we don't use whale's teeth as money today, because there are other better sources of money. Historically, gold has been a great use of money. Why? Because for one, it was limited in supply. The annual increase in the gold supply has never exceeded 3% in a year, and it's typically about 1% that gets mined and added to the gold supply each year. And it takes effort to produce that. Somebody's got to go out with some mining equipment and dig it out of the earth and process it. It's durable. It's something that's not going to degrade and rust and tarnish. It's verifiable. I can always melt it down. Now, sometimes people will sprinkle in other metals and other things with it, but I can melt it down and verify that it really is gold. It's generally portable, but again, depends on how divisible that is too. If I'm buying my house with gold, how many wagonfuls am I maybe going to need? Or if I'm buying a cup of coffee, how much of a small sliver of gold do I need to shave off? So it's a little complicated that way. And so when we say maybe why not gold today? Well, for one, it's too restrictive on government spending, which I'll point out in just a moment. But it also does have physical limitations, because again, am I going to be able to use this gold piece to buy a stamp or to buy a house? And how much am I going to be able to group that gold together to be able to make my transactions? And frankly, it's just easier today to exchange paper money or tap a credit card and be on my way with my purchase. A little brief history of the US dollar, as we think of that as being money. The dollar itself was never fixed in supply, but initially it was secured and tied to gold, silver, and copper because it was gold, silver, and copper. In fact, the United States government in its minting process set the standard for how much weight and percentages of each of the metals would be used in their gold, silver, and copper coins. In fact, the US Constitution even states that no state shall make anything but gold and silver, a silver coin, a tender in payment of its debts. And so any increase in the money supply that the government incurred in that era was paid for by actually acquiring gold, silver, and copper from the miners. So they had to pay a proof of work, if you will, for somebody to go through the process of mining that out of the ground and paying them and compensating them for their efforts to produce this metal. The US dollar was set as the standard of currency in the United States in 1792 with the Coinage Act. And again, the government guaranteed the authenticity of money at that time. The silver dollar had so much silver in it. The $20 gold piece had $20 worth of gold in it. In 1861, greenbacks or paper money were introduced, and these were demand notes where if you kept your gold at the bank, you could demand gold or silver in exchange for the piece of paper that you held. And so it was easier, of course, to transfer pieces of paper than it was actual pieces of metal. In a couple of years after greenbacks were introduced, in an effort to help pay for the cost of the Civil War, banks were then told they only needed to hold 25% of their reserves in the bank, and they could issue these demand notes up to, again, 4 times leverage to cover that. So immediately, the US incurred an increase in the money supply in 1863. In 1913, the Federal Reserve Bank was established, and it is what now sets the banking reserve requirements for all banks in the United States. And initially, that was also set at 25%, and that has fluctuated from as much as 40% to down to 0%, where it actually happens to be today. In 1934, the Gold Reserve Act was passed, and that follows on an executive order by Franklin Roosevelt to basically confiscate all of the gold from Americans to be held in banks in exchange for a note. And then once it was in the banks, a year later, the banks were required to surrender their gold to the US Treasury, and that is when Fort Knox was established. And then immediately right after that, gold's price, as set by the president, changed from $20.67 an ounce to $35 per ounce to redeem 1 ounce of gold. And then in 1971, President Nixon completely ended the gold standard. Prior to that, gold had been set to be redeemed at $35 per ounce. But even then, there was too much money in supply to really help hold it there. So as it relates to the dollar's value relative to gold, today gold is trading at around $3,000 per ounce. And since 1933, the dollar has lost 145 times its value relative to gold. Since breaking off of the gold standard, it's lost 85 times since 1971. And today, all of the value in Fort Knox of the gold that is there, even at $3,000 an ounce, represents about 2% of all of the dollars in circulation today. You can see this reflected in the cost of housing. This is a chart representing the median price home in dollars and in ounces of gold. Since breaking off of the gold standard in 1970, you can see the divergence, and the value of a house in dollar terms has skyrocketed. It's actually diminished in terms of gold's pricing. And so what has happened since 1970 especially is that we've seen a 37 times increase in the amount of dollars in our money system. That on a compounded annualized rate is about 6.75% compounded year over year increase. And I would argue that that is the actual rate of inflation. When we think about it, with the new innovations that we have, the economies of scale, improved technologies, we should actually see the cost of things get cheaper. Instead, we've been lulled into thinking that we should accept a 2 to 3% inflation rate instead. If you consider the growth of the economy minus the 7% annual increase, you can see that really our dollar should be gaining anywhere from 3 to 5% per year in purchasing power if there was a stable currency that we had. And so I would argue that a zero cost increase in the money supply is currency debasement. When there is no cost to increasing the supply, and we can just increase it as we wish, there's going to be more dollars in the system, and at no cost. That's something that, again, somebody's incurring the cost of that, but it's certainly not the government, and it goes by another name we all now know as inflation. And so inflation is more dollars chasing goods and services. It's an increase in the money supply. So you would then ask, well, what causes the money supply to increase? And in a word, debt. Debt causes the money supply to increase. All borrowing increases when the lender has less than 100% in reserves. This is known as fractional reserve banking. And this applies to all kinds of debt, our national debt, consumer debt, mortgage debt, credit card debt. All debt by banks issued is done so with less in reserves or on this fractional reserve basis. As I mentioned earlier, the banking reserve requirement is actually zero right now. Since COVID, banks were allowed to have unlimited amounts of reserve requirements. Now, they're encouraged to have a profit and not have to be bailed out, but today's average bank reserve is 18%. Subtract out a few different costs that they have to cover. This is known as the money multiplier, which as of January was 3.84 times, meaning that when you deposit $1,000 into your bank account, that gives the bank $3,840 on average to lend out. Where did that money come from? It just added to the money supply through lending. So fractional reserve banking provides lower than market interest rates. When we borrow money, that's actually not a bad thing. If the bank can share that risk across others and they can lend out more than they hold in reserves, I can actually qualify for and get a lower interest rate. And so if banks can lend out at a lower interest rates than what they hold in reserves, and especially if they can be bailed out for being too big to fail, as we saw in 2008, then they can offer lower interest rates, and I would say lower than the true cost of money. And this benefits the borrower as well as the bank, because now the bank can lend it many times over. But then the question comes, well, who then bears the cost of fractional reserve banking? Well, we all do. We all bear the cost with inflation. As there's an increase in the money supply, there's an increase in the cost of everything. But the wise and astute folks will do all they can to offset this by purchasing hard assets, real estate, stocks in companies that can adjust their pricing and make adjustments so that they can always be profitable and share those profits with their owners. And to the extent that people can leverage this with low interest rates and tax deductible interest rates, all the better. But those without access to debt are the ones who bear the greatest cost. They're unable to purchase hard assets, and especially with leverage. They require then more government services to help balance the scales and try to get things equal. Demands for minimum wage or student loan forgiveness or whatever the case may be to try to alleviate their situation. And at the end of it, we end up with more government. And guess what? More government is more debt, because a dollar spent today is a dollar borrowed. We do not balance our budget, and so everything we spend is an increase in government spending, which increases the money supply. And we see this effect by the Federal Reserve as they adjust their interest rates. When the interest rates get lowered, even by 1/4 of a point, stock market booms, everybody rejoices. Why? Because that means more borrowing and more money. More money in the system means more to spread around. Things are going up in value, at least in dollar terms. A decrease in or an increase in the interest rates results in less borrowing, less money, and things get, and that's how the Fed tries to adjust the free market. So what's affected? Everything. Stock market, real estate prices, jobs, all sorts of things. So in a nutshell, one of the things I really want to stress before we talk about Bitcoin is increased debt leads to an increase in the money supply, which is inflation. And the question I would ask us to consider is that transitory? I don't think it's transitory. Inflation will only reverse when national, institutional, commercial, consumer, and mortgage debt decreases. Do you see that happening? Here's an image of the national debt, and now as of the latest update, that red line is through the top of that white segment. We're now $36.5 trillion in debt and climbing, with more than $1 trillion of new debt being added each year. And you can see how it is even outpacing the money supply. But you might even ask, well, is this really a problem? I mean, we live in a pretty prosperous country. Things are going well. Uh, and, my house price keeps going up. My stocks keep going up. Is it really an issue? And I would argue that, well, again, it depends on how you've leveraged the system. And I use that word intentionally because, again, did you use debt to help leverage your situation to buy assets that grew in value? Good for you if you did, because that's really the only way to get ahead in this kind of economy. You can see this reflected in real estate prices. Real estate prices have gone up 16 times on the median priced home since 1970. And again, if I can borrow at 3% interest on something that's appreciating at 5 or 6% annualized, and I get a tax deduction, and I get 5-to-1 leverage because I had 20% down, then it's kind of a no-brainer, and what leads to increased housing costs. But what are the results of some of that? Well, now we've got an increased wealth gap, and the middle class being squeezed. Calls for socialism. I work with young people, and even in a Christian context, there's question about how am I ever going to be able to afford a home? And people don't know any better, but they see others and they say, well, how come they have and I don't? What's the answer? Oh, they must share. They must give up what they have. And socialism is never the answer, but it makes sense to them given the context that we've created. And so all of these things lead to increased government spending and more entitlement programs, which again just leads to more spending. And on the flip side, you have calls for lower taxes because lower taxes would just be that much more into the economy. Yes. However, again, without addressing the debt, the result is always going to be ongoing inflation, political unrest, bigger government needed to solve the problem, and so on. And the debt cycle continues. And I wonder if we've fallen for the Keynesian lie that debt and the debasement of our currency by increasing the money supply leads to prosperity. Does simply printing money create more goods and services? In Deuteronomy, God told his people, the Lord your God will bless you, as he promised you, and you shall lend to many nations, but you shall not borrow, and you shall rule over many nations, but they shall not rule over you. And so, is debt really the answer to financial prosperity? We live in a situation where even government spending, which comes at the cost of increased debt, is considered good for the economy. So is there a solution to the global fiat debt trap? I've explained our situation in America. America is the best economy of the world. Other fiat currencies are in a far worse situation. But is there a solution? Yes, it's been staring us in the face this whole time. Bitcoin. So what is Bitcoin? Well, let me first start off by saying it is not the gospel of Jesus Christ. As Paul says, I consider everything rubbish compared to knowing Jesus Christ and him crucified. So Jesus is the only savior of the world. Jesus is the only one who's going to get us out of the mess that we are in. But having said that, I do believe Bitcoin is good news. And why is it good news? Because it is the best money ever. What do I mean by that? Bitcoin is scarce. There is a fixed supply. It's instantly verifiable. It cannot be counterfeited or manipulated. It's portable. You can effortlessly move it, store it. It's divisible. It can be infinitely divisible to buy a fraction of a postage stamp to the biggest mansion you can imagine. It's durable. It's as long as there's electricity and there's a computer, it will never go away. It's fungible. Every piece is as good as the other. There's no one Bitcoin that's better than another Bitcoin when we're talking about Bitcoin. It's accepted, and it literally is accepted everywhere in the world. Now, not every organization is going to sell you their cup of coffee for Bitcoin, but you can go anywhere in the world and exchange your Bitcoin today for local currency. And I see a day when it will be the global currency. It is censorship resistant. It's a bearer asset. If you own Bitcoin, you carry it with you. You can spend it. You have it. It is yours. It cannot be stolen from you. It cannot be taken. If you control the key, you control your Bitcoin. One of my favorite aspects of Bitcoin is that it is decentralized. No government, no central bank, no group, no corporation, no person, no entity, no 51% ownership, no nothing can change Bitcoin. And it is completely self-governed. So what is Bitcoin? Well, it's a computer program. And it was launched in 2009 by a pseudonym named Satoshi Nakamoto. Nobody knows who this person is. The person may even have passed away. We don't know. And in collaboration with other economists and on message boards and other places, he was able to share his idea for decentralized, scarce digital money, enabling peer-to-peer transactions secured by energy, verified by distributed ledger holders. I'll explain a little bit of each of those here. So decentralized, again, nobody owns or controls Bitcoin. No government, no central bank, no corporation, no entity. It's a free computer program that anybody can run on their computer. And so this is called a node on the network. And there's currently over 20,000 nodes that run what's called the full ledger. And there are many tens of thousands of additional nodes across the network that run the most up-to-date, last few months worth of the ledger. Nodes validate transactions and update the public ledger as it goes. So nodes are scattered all over the globe. There's a node in every country, multiple nodes in every country of the world running Bitcoin. It is scarce. The protocol sets the cap and the mining distribution rate. There will never be more than 21 million Bitcoin that are mined. To date, 19.98 million have been mined. So we are more than 95% in currency today. The remaining 1 million coins will be minted over the next 110 years. So the way I look at it, Bitcoin is really at max capacity even today. One Bitcoin can be further subdivided into 100 millionths. Those are now referred to as Satoshis or sats. And so really what you need to maybe think of is 2.1 quadrillion sats on the Bitcoin network. And if needed, it could be subdivided even further. Here's just a breakdown of the mining schedule showing the distribution rate. And so the circulation of the way in which Bitcoin was mined and added to the pool has diminished over the years. And again, so we're 95% of our way there now, and the rest will be minted over the next 100 years. It's digital, meaning that Bitcoin are held in addresses in the cloud, recorded on every ledger of every node. And it takes a private cryptographic digital key to move your Bitcoin from one address to another address. And so there's a saying in the Bitcoin world, not your keys, not your coin. So whoever holds the key holds the address to the Bitcoin at that address. And that's why you might hear of some people trying to go through landfills and try to recover their laptops or something because they had their keys on a laptop. If you lost your keys, you lose your Bitcoin because there's no way to move Bitcoin without that private key. Some might ask, well, has it been, where anybody has got to somebody else's Bitcoin? No, the Bitcoin has never been corrupted. There's never been anybody who can get to Bitcoin other than getting to somebody else's keys to control their Bitcoin. It is secured by energy. You may have heard of the mining process, and I'm just going to very briefly talk about that because this is an important element of Bitcoin that separates it from other cryptocurrencies. It is a randomized lottery type of process where a computer running a program spends a whole lot of electricity, and the more electricity you spend, the greater your chances of winning the lottery. And when you do, you can, when you win the lottery, you get to share that with others. And I think it's important to note that nobody has ever been given Bitcoin. You had to mine for Bitcoin. Even Satoshi Nakamoto mined the very first Bitcoin on the Bitcoin network, and other miners also were participating on the network to mine whatever Bitcoin they may have obtained even in the early days. What happens is every 10 minutes roughly, a miner discovers the special block and wins the lottery. They get to collect all of the transactions since the previous 10 minutes or so, cobble those up together, and today they get to add 3 1/8 Bitcoin to their transaction block. And they get to broadcast that back to the nodes, and the nodes pick that up and they receive that. They broadcast that to the rest of the other nodes, and they validate the miner's block reward. And they look at every transaction that this miner is claiming as legitimate. If there is one transaction, and roughly there's about 4,000 transactions per block that occur every 10 minutes right now. If there is one transaction that is out of line, that node does not broadcast that transaction, and they wait for another miner to give them an honest block. And so today, if a miner discovers the block and doesn't and broadcasts a transaction that's not legitimate, they lose out on $275,000 worth of value. Everything is incented to conduct honest transactions. So the nodes receive this transaction. If everything checks out, they continue broadcasting that transaction. Everybody updates their ledgers. If the transaction is not good or something about it is fishy, nodes will not accept it, and it doesn't get broadcasted until the next miner who's honest will give that to them. So again, just real concisely, what is Bitcoin? It is decentralized, scarce digital money enabling peer-to-peer transactions secured by energy, verified by distributed ledger holders. So today, Bitcoin's trading at roughly $83,000 in terms of a US dollar for one full Bitcoin. But because remember, each Bitcoin can be divided into 100 millionths, $1 could purchase about 1,200 Satoshis or sats. So you do not have to have $83,000 to buy Bitcoin. You can buy 12 sats for a penny. So it's very, you buy as little or as much as a person might want, or exchange in value for as little or as much as you would want. The value of the Bitcoin network is now $1.7 trillion. It is the 8th largest asset in the world. It's the largest, most decentralized computer network in the world. About 1 in 7 Americans own Bitcoin or a derivative of Bitcoin through an ETF or other stock investments. They have, there's about 35% global growth annually in people accepting Bitcoin. And remember, our situation in America is 7% annualized inflation or degradation of the dollar. In other countries of the world, it's about 14%. So we complain about inflation here. Other countries of the world are very quickly adopting Bitcoin as a stable currency for them. As the largest demographic, males 31 to 35 own about 40% in that demographic will own Bitcoin. As you can see here, Bitcoin's about the 8th largest in terms of market cap in the world. I do want to just very quickly mention that Bitcoin is different from crypto. A lot of Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency that was created, but after it was launched, others said, well, we could build a better mousetrap. And as a result, we now have literally many thousands of other cryptocurrencies currencies that exist. I will argue that there is only one Bitcoin. It is the largest. All other cryptocurrencies together are less than half of what is the market cap of Bitcoin itself. So just know what you're buying when you explore cryptocurrencies, and there is only one Bitcoin. And in most cases, those others are not meant to be money and global money as is Bitcoin. As I kind of wrap things up here, I just kind of want to bring us back to where I led off with, in that I believe that money does speak to the importance of integrity, and that the world is clamoring for an equal weight and measure in all transactions. And that what happens today in our current financial system is that people work their entire lives for a sum of money that one lender can get by just obtaining a loan. Now, I'm not saying that they didn't take some risk with that, or that that wasn't the best thing for them to do, but when the money supply randomly gets increased without little consequence, that is theft and is a form of stealing from people who are working to create and add value. And until Bitcoin, people really had no other option but to participate and to perpetuate the system. The only way to get ahead was to borrow, to buy something of a hard asset. But now Bitcoin restores honest weights and measures in our financial system, both in America and globally, honoring the God-given sovereignty of every person in every transaction. I believe that Bitcoin is the best technology to promote the individual sovereignty and property rights of every person with property that cannot be debased, stolen, and it allows them the freedom to express how to decide when, how, and to whom they will spend their sats. Nothing will help the world's poor and restore the middle class than to give them a chance to easily engage in the global economy with money that they can store, that cannot be debased or controlled by the dictates of banks and governments. I allege that this was the most consequential innovation of our lifetime. Some things that I think of when I think about that is, again, absolute scarcity. We have never, as a human race, had something that was absolutely scarce that could be used as money. Even our homes and things that we think of, even gold, can be added to the supply. Bitcoin is something with absolute scarcity. I believe it will become the thing that is the measure that we measure value by as time progresses, instead of even in dollars. We do not know what it's like to have a distributed trusted ledger before that we can fully trust. I believe it will be used in things like voting integrity. Just recently, Guatemala used the Bitcoin network in its voting process. Instant global settlement without centralized intermediaries. It completely upends our current financial system. The global mining race. Donald Trump has said we want to be the crypto mining capital of the world. Well, in doing so, there's going to be a race to find cheap electricity and bring it to the masses as part of that. I believe that Bitcoin limits governmental power because it constrains government from overspending, because now there's an alternative currency and store of value that people can hold on to. And so what are the tax implications? It's going to vary, but how can we think too much today in terms of an income tax and sales tax? We may have to move toward assessments. There's going to be issues with that. But in the meantime, will there be a reduction in wars? Perhaps, when it's not so easy to tap into the military industrial complex and so forth. And ultimately a move towards free markets. If you wanted to acquire some Bitcoin, the best way is to own it where you control the keys. That's called self-custody. You own the keys, and it's what I would call true financial sovereignty. But because of the complexity involved and because of the responsibility involved, you got to make sure you never lose those keys, and you know how to ensure that they are well protected. third-party exchanges can be used, and I've listed a few here that you could explore. All of those are people focused completely on Bitcoin only, no other cryptocurrencies, and they would all give you great customer service and even help with the process of helping you, become self-custodied and own Bitcoin on the Bitcoin network. But the real simple and easiest way, and especially if you just want to dip your toe, is through ETFs. So exchange traded funds were launched about a year ago, and I've listed 4 here that are stock symbols where all they do is buy and hold Bitcoin on your behalf. And so through your brokerage account, if you want to acquire through the ups and downs of Bitcoin as it trades against the dollar, you can acquire Bitcoin through these ETF funds. I'm listing some books here, but I'm going to quickly go through that. You can look at those on your own, but highly recommend these resources. If you ever wanted to accept Bitcoin in your business, again, there might even be a market there for people to show that your values aligned, where depending on the person, if you say, hey, Bitcoin accepted here, maybe there's some value there. Zapright's a company that assists with that. So I'm going to turn it back over now to Dan, but if you'd like to reach out and connect with me, I'm available on LinkedIn. Would love to connect that way, and then I'll share my personal details from that point. But Dan, I'll hand it back over to you, and we can field whatever questions and things people have. You're muted, Dan.
Mute. Here we go. All right, Tim, thank you so much, my friend, for fascinating. My head is still scratching. I don't know. Is that anybody out there too? A lot to absorb for sure. But would you go in the comments now and just we want to get some feedback from you, and then we're going to open up for Q&A. I saw a few questions come in, so if you still have a question, feel free to post that. A reminder, we are going to be sending a PDF out of his slide deck presentation, so you're going to have all the information that you just saw or heard on the screen. So, man, let us know. Was this helpful to you? Put it in the comments. If you found this informative, insightful, give a thumbs up. Love to get a little feedback, to see real-time feedback if this was helpful to you. Let us know. And also, one thing we wanted to share with you as you're commenting there, please don't be bashful, guys. Come on. Like this, we're in the real modern world here. Put your thoughts in the comments as they come. That'd be awesome. We'd love to hear from you. Also, wanted to mention that we have been talking about, if this is of interest to you and you would like to do a deeper dive, we're considering doing a 3-week, 1-hour session with Tim for a donation base or maybe a limited charge. If you would like to do a deeper dive, please let us know. I'm going to give you an email address. If that's you, please email us and let us know if you would be interested in that, so we can reach out to you, or mention in the comments here if you are. So the email address is info, really simple, info@kingdomwayministries.net. info@kingdomwayministries.net. So let us know. And also put in the comments if you'd like to see us do more webinars like this, and what are the topics that you would like to see. We'd really love to hear from you. This is, as I said, a first time out of the gate, and we hope you enjoyed this. But before we go to questions, I want to share just a couple things with you. For those of you who might be interested in next steps, especially if you're here local in Northern Colorado and Denver. I'm sharing my screen here. We want to let you know about a few things that you can dive into right now. So nationwide with FCCI, we are rolling out a half-day peer advisory group for business owners and CEOs called Banded. And I'm defining this as our weapon against isolation, ineffectiveness, and mission drift from personal and professional call. My friends, there's nothing out there in the market like this. If you're a business owner or CEO, check this out right now. And Ken is going to drop this in the comments as well, a link that you can go to, because this is not on our website. It's an invite only. after hours dinner, not dinner, rather, just drinks and appetizers at the TPC course in between Denver and Northern Colorado, so you can easily attend. We'd love to have you come or reach out to me if you can't make this. If you're interested in being a part of a new group starting in April or May in Denver or Northern Colorado, depending which area you're located. And if you are in a different state or a city, please let us know, because there's banded groups starting all over the country right now, and might be in a city near you, or maybe you're a guide and interested in wanting to leading a group. And then also we have face-to-face events in Northern Colorado every second Thursday at 11:30. We have entrepreneurs that gather from all over the community come. So JB Kellogg's our next speaker. You can see this on our website, kingdomwayministries.net, and check out events, and you can register right now. Our next one's April 10th with JB Kellogg, CEO of Madwire, amazing man of God, and with 500 employees, built this company in just a little over 10 years. Incredible story, remarkable man to learn from. And then if you're in Denver, every third Thursday of the month, we have a breakfast venue. The next one is April 17th. The Mind of Christ, my friend Jeff Spataforan, author of The Joy Model and previous executive coach with Halftime Institute worldwide. Just incredible, deep man of God, and I know you're going to be blessed by what he would share. So there's just a few ways you can get involved, and I'll share one more here too, is that my friend Ken Powell, who's on the FCCI team behind the scenes here, running all of the things happening right now, leads an amazing webinar, and there's also a podcast too, but a webinar that you can check out. He's going to give you the link in the notes below if you would like to do check that out. Every month he has different guests from all over the country, amazing speakers, authors, business owners, CEOs. So please, the Pathway to Purpose, check that webinar out if you're not familiar with it. So let's go to some questions in the few minutes we have left, and if you're okay with it, we're just going to go over a little time, over an hour, as we just really want to bring some high value to you today. So one of the questions I fielded here, let me go up here, is by Edward. Forgive me if I botch your name, last name, Villano, I think. How would you respond to Bitcoin critics, Tim, who claim it is a giant Ponzi scheme? I thought that was an interesting question.
Yeah,
Any
great
thoughts
question.
on that?
Yes. The only thing about a Ponzi scheme typically is that it's pretty undercover as to who's doing what and what's involved. There are no secrets with Bitcoin. The ledger is public. Everyone can see everything. What you are paying for is the reimbursement of the mining process. And ultimately, if I pull out my piece of paper with a dead president on it, I might wonder, well, is that a Ponzi scheme too, right? So there are things that give value to money, the thing that we call money, and again, what gives it its value is its acceptability. It is now again a $1.7 trillion asset. Gold, for example, at the end of the day, gold is a shiny yellow rock. But yet, if I gave you an ounce of gold, you'd see that as being worth $3,000 in terms of dollar value. Well, why? Because we all attribute the value to it. And so there's nobody that loses with Bitcoin. Everybody only wins. There's not going to be somebody that pulls the rug out and says it's too bad, so sad. I'm glad I got out when I did. Everybody can win with Bitcoin, and everybody is winning and will continue to win. And ultimately, if Bitcoin becomes the world's reserve currency, it will continue to grow in value. Why? Because you're gaining purchasing power every year based on the GDP of the global economy. So it is money that is meant to be a store of value that will only gain in value. There's no gimmick or anything from that.
All right. All right. Well, thank you, Tim, and thank you, Ed, for that amazing question. Here's another one from Jeff Cave. I thought this was very interesting, is how is Bitcoin a store of wealth when it is so volatile? Any thoughts on
Yes,
that?
I am very concerned about volatility, especially when I see my dollar losing 20% of its value in the last 6 months against Bitcoin, or 50% in the last year, 80% in the last 5 years, and 90% in the last 10. So what I'm saying there, and you can hear my jest, yes, there is volatility, but volatility is in the given moment. Our houses are volatile. Our everything we buy and sell is volatile. And today, the dollar is looked at as the world's reserve currency and the store of value and the safety place that people go to in down markets. But we're seeing less and less and less volatility. And now that we get to a $1.7 trillion asset, its volatility is going to diminish with time. And when you've got fiat dollars that are only increasing and a fixed supply of Bitcoin, there's only one direction that goes ultimately. So I'm not concerned about momentary volatility. In fact, I appreciate the great buying opportunities I get on occasion with that.
So I know you're not supposed to give financial advice, but I
Yes.
think I hear what you're saying. If you buy it, keep it. Is that what you're
Never
saying?
sell your Bitcoin.
That makes sense to me. So, this one really makes sense to me. So Diane Lopes asked this question, or Lopez. Not sure if I got that right. Sorry if I botched your name. Is there a physical object that is Bitcoin, or is it just energy? I love that question because, before I got into this, that would be a question that I would ask right off the bat
Yep.
because it's kind of hard to wrap your mind around.
It is hard to wrap your mind around. And excellent question. It is only energy. It is only bounded by energy, which is the only thing that can be a proof of work. And so it is just perfectly represented by energy.
Awesome. So my friend Mike Mitchell is on the call today. So thanks for joining us, Mike. You had mentioned a little bit about how it's mined, but anything that you did not already say about that topic that you'd want to add of how it's mined?
Well, again, mining is just spending a lot of electricity running a computer, and there are, again, millions and millions of kilowatt hours being spent on the mining process. And in most cases, though, that mining process is done with stranded energy in places where they are bringing new energy into markets that don't currently have it. And the reason is because Bitcoin can be the fail-safe and bring low-cost energy everywhere it's implemented. And so instead of being something that sucks a lot of energy, when Bitcoin can be moderated through power purchase agreements, there are situations where in almost every situation and all around the globe, Bitcoin is bringing energy to communities and at rates previously unattainable, because now there's an unlimited capacity for the electricity that it can generate and use.
All right. Awesome. Awesome. Just two more quick questions, Tim, and then we'll let everybody go for today. But one question I have, and you might be reticent to respond to this, but as people are looking for other investments, whether it be Bitcoin or otherwise, do you see that with valuable in-depth research of blockchain technologies as possible areas to be looking in?
So blockchain is there's a lot of hype around blockchain. What blockchain is a distributed database. You don't really need blockchain technology for most applications. And so be leery of things that are touted as, oh, this is blockchain. I would question, well, what's the point of blockchain? There's a reason why Bitcoin is distributed. That's because you don't trust anybody else with real money. And so we don't trust institutions, we don't trust governments, we don't trust banks. So that's a valid reason for having a distributed ledger that is then has to be kept in sync through a blockchain technology. And so there's unless there's privacy concerns or some situation where you need that distributed ledger, most blockchain is probably hype rather than a real necessary technology.
No, great. I appreciate you sharing that, because I think there's a lot of confusion of that there's a direct link between blockchain and Bitcoin in some people's minds.
Well, there is between blockchain and Bitcoin,
Yeah,
but just because it's on a blockchain doesn't mean it's the Bitcoin blockchain.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Cool. Thanks for clarifying that. I appreciate that. So one last question from my friend Dan Hardy of Dan Hardy Coaching and one of our coaches on Kingdom Way team. What is the fair value of full value of a Bitcoin?
Well, the value is in the eye of the beholder for all things, but today a full Bitcoin is trading on the exchanges for about $83,000. So if you wanted to buy one full Bitcoin and be a full Bitcoiner, if you will, or a whole coiner, as they would say, you need $83,000
Wow.
to buy a whole coin. But I can buy 8 cents worth if I wanted. So
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You
you
shared
don't
that
need to
earlier.
buy a whole coin. And there,
Yeah.
but with that in mind, there will only ever be 21 million whole coins ever. Should it become the world's global currency, how much of the total money that the world is using, what percentage would you like to have? So that's the value
Of the
proposition.
world's wealth. Yeah.
Yep.
That's great. That's great. Well, Tim, thank you so much
It
again
was a
for joining
pleasure.
us. Yeah, you've been so awesome. And I just appreciate your heart of generosity to share and give back in these ways in multiple venues, not just with Kingdom Way, but others. And just thank you for sharing with us today. Hey, everybody, give Tim a hand in the chat. And thank you for joining us again. A couple things I want to leave you with. If you have questions or if you're interested in any things we mentioned earlier, maybe a follow-up opportunity or things that you didn't get in the chat, reach out to us at info@kingdomwayministries.net, info@kingdomwayministries.net. We'd love to serve you, or check out our website, kingdomwayministries.net, and you can see all the things that we do to serve entrepreneurs in our community and across the country with FCCI as well. So thank you so much. I want to let you know, my friends, that we are with you and for you. We love you. We appreciate your calling in the marketplace. We want to serve you and help you in any way. So please reach out and seek to make him famous today as you make your work and your ministry one. Lord bless everybody. Have a good one.
Man, thank you.
Thank you so much, Tim, Greg, Ken. Have
Thanks,
a good
guys.
one.
That was great.